Welcome to the opening line report for OddsTrader. I am TommyFreezePops, and week one is here, people. We have waited all summer long to get football going. And what better way to talk about football than to immediately react when the week is over and you're just already clamoring for week two? So, Sunday night, you will get us immediately following Sunday Night Football. And in fact, you are going to get that every single Sunday night after the game. You're going to get me, you're going to get Monotone Football, Stu Durst, and you're going to get Analytics Capper, our guy Albert. We are going to take a look at the lines as early as you possibly can. I know you can look weeks out, but let's be honest. You're focused week to week. So as soon as your focus goes to the following week of football, we are there to break it down and give you early leans and to hopefully make you some money. So let's waste no time here. Let's bring in my man, Monotone Football, the man, the myth, the legend. Stu is going to be coming on with us here. Stu, unmute yourself. Get ready. We are rocking here. Are you excited for this or what?
Man, I couldn't be more happy to be here. We've been waiting, months and months and months to come on here and talk football. It's finally happened. Obviously, couldn't be any happier to be partnering with a brand like OddsTrader as well, right? This is an app that I use every single day. I don't need to tell you guys how important line shopping is in this current market, right? I think everybody kind of knows that at this point. And like Tom just said, there's really no better way to get early value than kind of jumping on as soon as those lines out. So we're going to be here with you guys every single Sunday, immediately reacting to those opening lines. All the breaking news you see from Sunday night, we'll be talking about fresh perspective every single week. I am super pumped to be here talking football. And hey, I can't wait till our guy Analytics Capper joins us as well.
So AC is going to be with us on Sunday for his first broadcast with us. Got the two of us for today, so hopefully that's all right for everybody because we know AC, he's got a good following here. But at the end of today's show, we're going to give you the first segment where Monotone Football is going to break out the player prop goods. That is his expertise. He caps games too, so don't worry, you're getting everything here. But we're going to get his specialty here as the cherry on top at the end of the broadcast. But let's dive into the game of the week, possibly. Lions at Kansas City. We obviously had some breaking news in that game just a few hours ago here that I'll let Stu break down a little more. But we have the Lions, the darlings of the end of last season, coming in as 6.5-point underdogs to Arrowhead. The money line, you can get Kansas City at minus 278, Detroit at plus 225, and the total at 54.5. These lines coming to us from our friends at DraftKings. Stu, who do you like in this one? And honestly, are people getting a little too hyped here on the Lions? Are they too bullish on the Lions? And did the news that just happened really give an impact here on how we should be betting this game?
Yeah, no, maybe just a day ago, right? I would have given you a bit of a different answer as someone, maybe one of many people that is sitting with a little bit of a Kansas City 6.5 ticket. I'm suddenly not feeling so good, right? Travis Kelce has been announced as questionable, but the line moving from 6.5 closer to 6 to now 5.5 is kind of telling us that the sports books believe that Travis Kelce will be out. And while for most teams, obviously losing your tight end may not be the biggest priority, when we look at this Kansas City receiving core, there are a lot of concerns. This is a very young room. We're talking about a second-year receiver in Sky Moore, who's now being asked to kind of step up into the lead. We're talking about a guy like Kadarius Toney, hadn't played a single preseason snap so far, and he can barely stay on the field. We got a guy in Rashee Rice, who has never played a snap of NFL football before. And then we've got Justin Watson and Marquez Valdez-Scantling. I mean, when we talk about that Kansas City high-powered offense, those aren't quite the names you want to think of, right? You don't really want that kind of ace number one wide receiver over there. So the Kelce news has made me a little bit less bullish on Kansas City, right? Maybe just a day ago, I would have come in here and said, I think it might be one of my favorite picks of the week, right? You see quotes like Jared Goff saying, they want to play a shootout. I'm ready to play a shootout. That would not make me happy as a Lions bettor. I can't see a single team in the league, besides maybe the Bills beating the Chiefs in the shootout. So I obviously love this Kansas City offense. The Jones holdout is a little bit of a concern on defense, but this Kelce news is huge. And with the sports books kind of moving their lines slowly, it kind of tells me that Kelce might be missing this game, which is definitely a worry as someone that has that 6.5 already.
Yeah, I'm wondering how low this line can get here for Kansas City. And even before the news of Kelsey possibly not playing on Thursday night, the Chiefs have had problems covering big spreads in recent years. And I'm sure you can speak to that. But, it's another year of tread on the tires for Kelsey and all the other guys on the Chiefs roster here. I'm not really worried about the tread on Mahomes' tires. That guy is just a freak, but who knows? And I don't know. I saw the 6.5 and I thought, I liked what the Lions did at the end of last season. And Amon-Ra is an absolute beast, right? Like that guy eats. I could see him 11, 12, 13 catches to open the season, right? Early in the year, Goff's pacifier, right? So I don't know. I'm thinking I want to get on this number right now before it gets lower, especially given the fact that the Chiefs have had issues with the bigger numbers in recent years.
Yeah, and looking at a guy like Jones, right, who's holding out on the defensive end, that's one of their best pass rushers. So now we're kind of looking at a second-year guy in Karlaftis as being the kind of guy that you're relying on to get after the quarterback. If there's one thing we know about Jared Goff, he's not great under pressure. He's never been great under pressure, right? I don't know if this Kansas City defense is actually going to be able to break through that great Lions offensive line. I mean, we know you build teams through the trenches, right? And the Lions have spent first-round pick after first-round pick kind of strengthening up that offensive line. So I do have a lot of concerns about this Chiefs defense. It's really, how much do you trust Patrick Mahomes? Do you think Patrick Mahomes can uplift a bunch of middle-tier wide receivers and young guys into a win? It's not a bad bet, right? We've seen Mahomes do it year after year, but it is a little bit scary with this Kelsey news right now.
Yeah, I was going to say to your Mahomes point. Yeah, I mean, he's basically done it his entire career, right? Like just put in player X and they become an impact guy. And that's why when I'm doing my fantasy drafts this week, I'm kind of leery about picking anyone other than Kelsey as far as like Chiefs skill position guys, because they're kind of like when Brady was with the Pats back in the day. And you might like a player, but they might go 3 games without giving the guy, multiple touches because he goes with the open guy. He goes with the hot hand. He's that type of quarterback. So really, really interested to watch this game on Thursday night. Honestly, you could put a CFL game on Thursday night and I'm going to be ready to go. I mean, I just want football to be back. It feels like it's been like 5 years since we got to watch football here. So here's the game that I am most excited for in week 1. And that is San Francisco, a 2.5-point favorite heading into Pittsburgh. They are minus 142 on the money line, and you can get the Steelers at plus 120, the total at 41. And the Steelers, a lot like the Lions, finishing the year really hot. Kenny Pickett seeming like he can be a guy. Looks like the Steelers did some interesting things this offseason. They added Allen Robinson to play in the slot, which I think could be interesting. I know he's up there in age. It's been a few years, but reports coming out of Pittsburgh that he's looked really good. That defense is healthy. So I just like Pittsburgh. And I know that there's going to be cappers that are going to be on the other side of this, but just as a casual, we'll say, I look at the Steelers as a team that could come out and surprise people and really help the AFC North be one of the better divisions in football this year. But you have the capper brain. Tell me where your head is here on this, because the Niners are loaded and Brock Purdy, MVP. I'm joking, but the Niners are one of those teams. It doesn't matter. It just seems like every year they're in the mix in an NFC championship conversation.
Yeah, and you can think a lot of that due to that Kyle Shanahan system, right? We know how strong that defense is. They've lost a defensive coordinator, it feels like, every single year, whether it's Davis over to the Texans, whether it's Saleh over to the Jets, and yet they just plug in a new guy and that defense continues to be elite. To be completely honest, when I first saw the spread, I don't want to start spicy right here, but I couldn't believe we were getting a number under 3.5. I would have put this number at San Francisco -4, maybe even San Francisco -4.5. And it is very rare that I get a line on the other side of 3 that I like so much. So I understand Pittsburgh did end the season very hot. TJ Watt is there, arguably the best defensive player in football right now. But hey, we also have one of the best defensive players on football on the other side as well. And the thing is, the Pittsburgh offensive line was awful last year, right? And that was one of the big things they wanted to focus on improving in the offseason. It would be nice if they could start off against a little bit of an easier defensive line. They're arguably going up against one of the best defensive lines in football, not just this year, but like we said, over the last couple years. And that's a pretty tough test in week 1. I can see this Pittsburgh team growing and getting stronger as the season goes on, but I think there's a lot of offseason hype that has maybe gotten a little bit exaggerated, and that's why we're getting such a great San Francisco line. And this is not coming from some Brock Purdy truther, right? He's truly one of the worst college quarterbacks I've ever watched play, right?
He played a lot of games in college, though. That's what they say. He had success because he just played a lot. He had all the reps, right?
Yeah, I mean, some would say that. I didn't believe it all last year, to be completely honest. Yeah. But it's another credit to the Kyle Shanahan system, right? This guy, I mean, talk about some of these quarterbacks in the league that seem a little bit lost right now. Just plug them and play them in San Francisco. He makes it so easy for these guys. He's not asking them to do too much, right? You don't want Brock Purdy trying to read the field and make his own decisions. You want him to check it down to some of the best yards after catch players in the league. I think that's exactly what's going to happen right here. I really like San Francisco this week.
And you mentioned the yak guys, Christian freaking McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel when he's healthy. Ayuk is great. The list goes on. And again, that Shanahan system allows these guys. It's kind of like with the Chiefs offense where it's just plug and play. And Kittle, when he's healthy, is a top 5 tight end, maybe top 2, 3. He just hasn't been able to be as healthy as we'd like to see George Kittle in recent years. That's why I've stayed away from him in fantasy. So I'm pumped to watch this game. I've kind of bought into the Steelers a little bit, but I could see why you'd be all over that Niners number, given where you sit on both of those teams. So let's take a look here. And I don't know if anyone's heard this, but Aaron Rodgers plays for the Jets now. He's not on the Packers anymore. I had breaking news. Not like we haven't talked about that nonstop since, I don't know, February. So they're going to host the Bills on week 1 here. I believe this is our Monday nighter. And the Bills are 2.5-point favorites heading into MetLife. You can get them at -142 on the money line, Jets +120, and the total at 46.5. And you talked about Steelers hype. I mean, the Jets hype, it cannot be contained. It's been absolutely crazy, especially with Hard Knocks. So, I don't know how good the Jets are going to be based on the hype. I think they're going to be improved because how can you be, the same when you replace the biggest problem with a guy that's won multiple MVPs who still seems to have something in the tank, right? You have a ton of young talent on both sides of the ball here. Why should I not bet on the Jets here as an underdog at home with all of the hype on their side? The Colorado effect, right? Like everyone's saying, oh, they're not as good as this. Then they come out and then they do what they did to TCU. Maybe the Jets get a little bit of that here in week 1. What say you?
Actually, I don't mind that comparison whatsoever as someone that was once again against Colorado, right? And I've clearly been proven a non-believer by Mr. Sanders. But over in the NFL, I think the kind of the same similar build that the Bills have as last year is going to be a huge advantage in this game, right? We know this New York Jets team brought in a lot of new faces, right? We know Aaron Rodgers is there. And while a lot of people are already kind of penciling him in as an MVP candidate, I still want to see how he adjusts into this new offense, right? I mean, I think people are maybe underreacting to the fact that this is going to be a completely new offense, a completely new scheme with multiple new pieces, right? We got to remember, who did Aaron Rodgers bring in to play wide receiver? All of his best friends. Alan Lazard, 45-year-old Randall Cobb, 55-year-old Mercedes Lewis, right there. All these guys that we thought might not be even in the league anymore are suddenly going to be the number 2 and the number 3 targets against arguably one of the best teams in the league right here. So I do wish this Jets team had a little bit more depth, right? I mean, Garrett Wilson is obviously a stud. I don't need to tell you guys that. You saw how he played last year. Same with Sauce Gardner. I mean, that Stephon Diggs versus Sauce Gardner matchup is going to be one of the most intriguing of the week, right? When we talk about cornerback versus wide receiver. But at the end of the day, the Bills are rolling back what they had last year. I think they're at a kind of of an all-time low hype spot, right? People are saying their championship window is over, despite the fact that they arguably have an MVP caliber quarterback coming back into an offense he's very familiar with a very strong coach in Sean McDermott over there. I like this Buffalo team, but to be honest, this is one of the hardest games of the week for me. I think this could go either way, and I think you can tell with the bookmakers, right? You see the 2.5 some places, you see the 2 in some places. It was 3 a little bit earlier in the year. It got hammered down a little bit. This is going to be all over the place, and I don't know about you. I don't love guessing. This one feels like a little bit of a guess, so I would lean the Bills side, but I'm not making any super strong bets in this one. I just like to see Aaron Rodgers.
This might be a live bet situation because you really want to wait to see what the Jets really look like with all of their ones out there. I mean, Hard Knocks has done a very good job of showing us that the Jets, there's lots of good positive vibes, and Aaron Rodgers is great, and him and Garrett Wilson have a connection, and Garrett Wilson's a stud, and Q's a stud on defense. But it has also shown us some shades of there being some problems with the offensive line. And again, they haven't focused on that, but it's going to be something they need to figure out. And I know the Bills are going to be without Von Miller here. So the pass rush, it's still really good. The Bills defense is still good, but it's not going to be as dominant as it could be without the former Super Bowl MVP in there. I'm looking at live betting here. And I also probably will like to look at the prop market for this one as well, because I love Josh Allen rushing yard props. That's always something that I win money on during the NFL season. So I'll be curious to see what you think in the prop market here as well. So tell me why the Bills championship window is still open. Give me 30 seconds on that.
I mean, they have the second best quarterback in the league, right? I think that this is a quarterback-driven league, right? You kind of mentioned it. The pass rush may not be as strong as it was, but this is still a very strong defensive team. And at the end of the day, even if you're throw away all the analytics, throw away all the stats, you put the coach, you put the quarterback, and I think if you just picked the better team, right, the better coach, the better quarterback combo in every single game against the spread all year, I think you'd be doing pretty good. I think this is a strong team. It's an offense that has a lot of charisma, right? We know Stephon Diggs is the guy out there, but I think Gabe Davis is someone that maybe we might be sleeping on a little bit, right? He had all the hype in the world coming into last season after that insane playoff game, but he was a little bit hampered by injuries. We saw via advanced stats he wasn't getting as much separation. Now he's as healthy as he's ever been. This is a very strong team. Adding Dalton Kincaid, an absolute weapon out of the slot, right? He's called a tight end, but this is essentially a 6'5", 240-pound jacked wide receiver playing in the slot. Super excited to see Kincaid out there. I think this Bills offense can really run with anyone in the league.
So we have a comment here from YouTube. His name's Cushback, I believe. He's missing a vowel in his last name, so we'll call him Cushback. He says, new offense, Hackett is the OC. He spent time with Rodgers in Green Bay. And Cush, I hear what you're saying there, but it's a new offense for the rest of the Jets roster. And also, it's not like Hackett is completely implementing a Green Bay offense from 2 years ago. I mean, remember, he did have that time in Denver. So there's a lot of stuff that needs to get sorted out here with the ones early in the season. And like Stu mentioned, we're bringing all these senior citizens in here to play with their friend Aaron. So there's just stuff to iron out. Things don't just snap into motion right away. That's not how it works in the NFL. It just doesn't. I mean, look at the Bucks in what was it, 2020? I forget. COVID kind of just blends every year together for me. It took them 10 games to figure out who they were when Brady and all his friends came together in Tampa Bay, and then they won the freaking Super Bowl. I'm not saying the Jets are going to win the Super Bowl, but it's just going to take some time, I think. So let's just hammer the live bets in these Jets games and have some fun. Hey, all right. Let's look at a kind of a sexy matchup here. Sexy uniform matchup. I hate the Dolphins, but I love their uniforms. Dolphins, 3-point dogs heading to Los Angeles to take on the Chargers. Moneyline Chargers minus 166. The Dolphins at plus 140 and the total at 51. It'd be great if we could get an over here and just see an absolute shootout. This is right in that prime window too. I think it's the 425 game on Sunday. So I'm pumped. This is just going to be a fun football game. I hope Tua can stay healthy this season. Those guys always are tied together Tua and Herbert because of where they were drafted. And, I'm just excited to watch these two teams play football again. I know the Dolphins ended in disappointing fashion last year, as did the Chargers. As a Jaguars better in that game, loved the outcome. I was hammering them live too. I'll tell that story another day. But yes, I'm very excited for this game. This is like the epitome of like, yes, week 1 is here. Let's go. I want to watch this game.
No doubt. No doubt. This is my favorite game of the week right here. The Chargers are one of the teams that I'm most exposed to coming into the season. I have some Justin Herbert MVP money already locked in. And I think this is a team that we're going to see finally play a little bit up to expectation, especially with a new offensive coordinator, right? When you look at a guy like Justin Herbert, he's already has the reputation of being one of the best quarterbacks in the league, but maybe the production hasn't been there last year. When you look at something like his average depth of target, right? It was Colt McCoy level. It was it was just around 5 to 6, right? Which is one of the lowest marks we have in the league. We have a new offense. They're going to let him throw the ball down the field a little bit more. We've added some new weapons. Quentin Johnson going in the first round from that TCU team we just talked about a minute ago. I like this Chargers team a lot. And we talked about the Miami side. You mentioned Tua's health. What I'm more worried about is I think these coaches have really watched the tape, right? Tua did some amazing things last year. I love the McDaniel scheming. I'm going to be a fan of his coaching style. Really, no matter how this Dolphins team does, he's so impressive at getting guys open. He's so impressive at tailoring the offense around yards after catch, something his mentor, Kyle Shanahan, knows a lot about. Obviously, Tyreek Hill and Jayden Waddle are great targets to have here. And I think it's going to be a high-scoring game, right? But when we just talk about when push comes to shove, who's going to win this game, I think it's the Chargers. I think when we look back at Miami last season, we're going to see that Tua was one of the best quarterbacks in the league. In fact, one of the best quarterbacks we've seen in the last 20 years, throwing the ball over the middle, right? That due to their great scheming, they were getting guys constantly open over the middle, and he was performing. But towards the end of the year, we did see a lot of regression when defenses were starting to tailor their offense towards that, right? We suddenly noticed that Tua can really only excel over the middle. And when you force him to make those, tougher throws on the outside, that's where the interceptions happen. That's where he really started to struggle. I think now that we've had a whole offseason to watch that, I do think we see a little bit of regression for Tua. I know it's not fun, right? I love this Dolphins team. We got to remember that offensive line is still struggling. They're going into week 1 with Raheem Mostert as their lead back and really no backup plan, right? Jeff Wilson was suddenly questionable, and now he's maybe out for the season. I don't know what's going on over there, but I like the Chargers this season. I do think the Dolphins are in store for a little bit of regression here.
Yeah, the Jeff Wilson thing the other day was interesting. They were like, yeah, he just can't keep himself healthy, so he's going to be on the IR. We're like, what does that mean? And for a team that let Tua kind of die on the field a few times last season, work on your phrasing there, Mike McDaniel. All right. It's going to be a fascinating season for both of these teams. In a weird way, it's kind of make or break for a lot of guys involved here. Like Staley, it's kind of put up or shut up now, right? Like you survived the Jaguars loss. You need to now prove that you belong to stay here. You have a stud. You have to go do something with the stud or you're going to be gone. You probably already should be gone. And I don't think Mike McDaniel's going anywhere, but if Tua doesn't come out and ball and stay healthy, the Dolphins could probably be in the QB market for this upcoming draft. I know Caleb Williams, it's going to be really hard to get him. You have to be really bad to get him. I bet the Cardinals are going to try and win 0 games to try and get him for the next draft here. But Caleb Williams has come out and said, I want to play for the Dolphins. Like he's got that NBA mentality already. So, who knows? Maybe 6 games in, Tua is a little banged up. He's not looking as good as he should. Dolphins maybe just say, screw it. They throw in the towel. We know their owner likes to throw games. He tried to, with Brian Flores at the helm. So I'm just throwing it out there. I put my conspiracy theory hat on and I'm ready to, make fun of the Dolphins any way I possibly can all the time. All right, let's go to a Sunday night football matchup we've never seen before. The Cowboys at the Giants, 3.5-point favorites. That was a joke, by the way. They play twice a year on Sunday Night Football. Money line, Cowboys -166 and the Giants at +140. The total at 46.5. I just don't enjoy watching either of these teams. Even when they're fun, I'm just like, I get enough of it. It's shoved down my throat constantly. Dak on ESPN. Oh, the Giants did this. The Giants did that. I also hate the Giants, as you guys can probably tell right there. Pats fan. We'll talk about them in a second. So I'm going to watch this game begrudgingly. I do. With that said, I do have a Cowboys Super Bowl ticket that I picked up like a day or two after the Super Bowl. Just got really good value. I forget where I got it at, but it was crazy. It was like plus 2,200. I'm like, yeah, I'll throw a couple dollars on that. They have talent on the roster. They have a fun defense. So, I'm going to watch, as I've said. The Giants seem to have a weird offseason. It didn't feel like they really decided to improve. They were like, well, we have Brian Daboll and we made the playoffs, so let's just run it back. They did bring in Waller, so that'll be interesting to see. DJ is basically Michael Vick back there, so we'll see how he does with his rushing props this season. So I'm curious where you sit on both of these teams here, Stu. And I'm definitely going to want to hear what you have to say in the prop market here later on in the show.
Yeah, well, I'll give a quick shout out to Daniel Jones, right? You mentioned the Vanilla Vic right there. He's one of the first players I can remember to turn a completely negative nickname into positive, right? He was given that nickname after he fell on that easy 80-yard rushing touchdown where he just completely wiped out. And he suddenly turned it into a positive, right, with this new Daboll offense. And you do got to give a lot of credit to Daboll. I'm a huge fan of him. I was a huge fan of his system with the Bills. And I do believe in him as just a long-term kind of coach. But like you said, they didn't really get much better in the offseason. They replaced their practice squad wide receivers with more practice squad wide receivers, right? Paris Campbell, a guy who's barely played over the last couple of years. Hodgins is in still from last year. Now we're bringing back the ghost of Sterling Shepard. This Giants team is very interesting, but like I said, I do believe in Daboll over there. As for the Cowboys, you kind of nailed it. That defense is scary, but I'm not really sure what we can expect in offense. One of the big things they stressed in the offseason was running less plays. They wanted to be a little bit more focused on defense and a little bit less high pace on offense. I'm a little bit confused how that happens, right? Normally when you hear talk like that, you think, okay, we're going to focus on the rushing game. That is going to be the clear way. You have a great offensive line right here. We have a good running back. Is Tony Pollard really going to be a guy that carries the ball 20 times a game? This is not a role he's ever played in his life, right? He's been a change of pace back his whole life, and obviously the production has been amazing. Tony Pollard has proven pretty much everyone wrong so far, but we got to remember that's on a 12 to 15 touch per basis kind of, right? What are we going to do now that he's touching the ball 20 to 25 times a game? I'm not really sure I see how this Dallas offense works out. I think if anything, I'm going to get a little bit of a sprinkle on that New York Giants money line in this one. And hey, maybe we even throw in a little parlay with a nice Daniel Jones rushing touchdown to start off the season on the right side.
I like it. Back to Vanilla Vic for the early touchdown prop. You mentioned Tony Pollard, and I've been thinking about that a lot, especially since the Pats just signed Ezekiel Elliott. And look, I'm fine with them signing Zeke for what they signed him for. It's basically a prove it deal, but we'll get to the Pats. But yeah, Tony Pollard was great in his role. And now it's like, you're going to be the bell cow guy. Now it tells me that they're going to be leaning heavy on their passing attack this season, especially, you bring in Brandon Cooks, who it seems like anywhere he goes, he becomes a factor in an offense. He's played for I think 5 teams in 8 years or something crazy like that. So he must be horrible to deal with in the locker room. I don't know what that's about. But Deuce Vaughn, Kansas State, maybe he comes out and he kind of slides into that Tony Pollard role, right? And maybe you just have dueling Tony Pollards in the backfield for the Cowboys, and they become this amazing dump it off team. Deuce Vaughn is a guy that I am really pumped to watch in the NFL. I think he's a guy to target in the touchdown market here for week 1 for Dallas.
That's interesting. I mean, I think a smarter team might do something like that, right? I think a smarter coaching staff. We just talked about McDaniel. I think McDaniel would love that Tony Pollard, Deuce Vaughn, pure speed combination. I'm just not sure if I have a lot of confidence in Dallas to actually, implement that, right? I've been waiting for Dallas to sign Kareem Hunt for 2 months. I figured that was destined. And suddenly they're actually going to the season with nobody else there really besides Pollard. And like you mentioned, Vaughn. So I think Vaughn might grow as the season goes on and on. But man, it's going to be tough for him to get out there and prove himself just given his size alone.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head there. Maybe a smarter coaching staff would have built an offense that would implement both those guys. All right, let's do it. Let's rip the Band-Aid off. Let's talk about the Patriots. Eagles, 4-point favorites at Gillette, week 1, Brady Day, money line on the Eagles minus 198. Patriots plus 164, and the total at 45. And I got to be honest, and this is rare that you say this, I feel like there's value on the money line here for the Eagles. Like the fact that they're only minus 198. I mean, the Eagles are just a superior football team to the New England Patriots. And this is the perfect time for the Pats to play the Eagles because it's week one. Weird stuff happens in week one. Teams need to kind of figure things out. The Eagles didn't do a ton this offseason either, so maybe they kind of already know what they have to do. But, week one is the time where the Pats need to play a team like this. If they play the Eagles when they're clicking, there's no keeping up with it. I know the Patriots defense is what it is. I think it's really good. I think they even made it a little bit better this offseason. They had a good draft. Let's see if Gonzo is going to be good. I think Keon White's going to be good immediately. That guy's just a grown man. He just eats players for lunch. Watching him in the preseason, I was like, all right, I've seen him play 3 snaps. Get him off the field. We don't need to see this anymore. But I just have no faith in the Patriots offense right now. And I know they had clowns running the offense last season for God knows what reason. I love Bill Belichick, but what the hell were you thinking, man? But you bring in Bill O'Brien. Maybe you get more of that Alabama Mac. I think the receivers are fine. We don't really have a true number one, but we have like 5 2.5s, right? So you put that all together and you just kind of figure it out. I do like the rookies, but who the hell knows with a rookie? I think Pop Douglas is going to be fun. It's just a weird team. It's a weird team all around. You could tell me they'd win 5 games. You could tell me they'd win 10 games, and I'd believe you on both fronts. So I will be betting Eagles money line. I could see the Patriots keeping it close, but I think there's still enough value there at minus 198 on the Eagles money line to take it there. And I would also take the under. I think that the Pats are going to keep this a really low scoring game for Tom Brady Day, no less, the man who once set the single season touchdown record and is the greatest player in NFL history. So that's my little rant there for the Patriots. I'm sure I'll throw in some more stuff here as you say things. But where does an objective mind go for this game?
Yeah, it's going to the Eagles as well. This is a surprising line. I mean, I think if you asked maybe whether it's a casual fan or more an advanced bettor to just guess what they thought the Eagles versus Patriots line would be week one, what do you think the result would be? I'm thinking the consensus pick would probably be 6.5, maybe 6 even. This 4 line does feel like it's giving a lot of credit to that New England defense, which I do agree with, and also the home field advantage, which maybe I don't disagree with as much because we know that Eagles team has been great both at home and on the road. What I'm concerned about here is I just don't think at the end of the day, I don't think that the I don't think that the Patriots can keep up, right? I agree with you. I think these are 2 very strong defensive teams, but I think the key with this New England team is going to be that pass rush, like you mentioned, whether it's Judon, whether it's White, the rookie, who I agree with you, absolutely love, could not believe he fell that far. And then a guy like Uche, who's kind of going way under the radar, a great speed pass rusher. If any sportsbook would give me a season-long sacks line, I would take it 100%. I've been begging for it all summer. So I like the defense. The problem is they are going against the best offensive line in football week one. It's a bit of a tough matchup. I think the Eagles, it starts close, but I think they run away with it as the game goes on.
Yeah, I could totally see it. See, my only thing is I think that it'll just remain close. But you do bring up a good point with that awesome offensive line kind of neutralizing the Patriots' attack there. But, and now here I am putting the homer hat on. When Bill Belichick knows that a team does one thing extremely well, he is able to adjust and kind of take care of that, right? So the Eagles thing that they do that's unstoppable is the Jalen Hurts running play, right? That one play they do where it doesn't matter. 4th and short, 3rd and short, doesn't matter. We're going to go for it because we're going to convert, right? I think Belichick will be able to stop that more times than they will allow it. And I think that what ultimately will keep it close. There's going to be a few of those 3rd or 4th downs where the Pats defense is going to be able to stuff that play. But again, tell me anything and I'd believe you with the Patriots at this point. They need to like regain my trust in a weird way because look, 4 years ago, Tom Brady and the Patriots started the season 8-0 and then it just fell apart. And since that moment, it has fallen apart. it just is. They've been 25-25 without Tom Brady. They've been a 500 team. And when you're a 500 franchise, this is what it is. It's sometimes you win and it's convincing. Sometimes you lose and it's bad. So let's see what this team is. I don't want to wear my cheerleading outfit for them at the moment. So before we get to your props here, Stu, I want to do some quick hitters here. Just any other games that maybe are piquing your interest. I know I have one. Do you have one that maybe is not in that marquee level that you have your eye on for betting, purposes, fandom, whatever it is?
Yeah, I think there's two that stick out to me. I think I like the Commanders. I got them at 6.5. Now it's 7 at most places, but I do think you can kind of get that 6.5 if you wait a little bit, or if you even buy the half point down. We kind of know how important that is at times. But man, Arizona moving on from Colt McCoy suddenly. Now we're throwing in a guy like Joshua Dobbs or Clayton Tune, I guess, suddenly into the starting quarterback role with one of the least impressive, teams in football. I think Washington is going to run the ball all game. I know we've got a lot of hype about Howell, Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson is someone that's absolutely caught fire in the fantasy community, but I think this is going to be a fairly boring game. I think Arizona keeps it close at first. I think both teams run the ball a lot, and then I think we really see how bad this Arizona defense is. You mentioned earlier that they might try to win 0 games. I think they might win 0 games without trying, right? I think they might truly be that bad this season. So I know it's kind of scary to lay this kind of number with Washington right here. I think it stays close to the first half. I think, Washington bettors might be a little bit scared there, but as the game goes on and on, I think the turnovers start to come, and I think that rushing game really takes over for Washington.
So you're a Washington fan, correct?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so I know people have loved Sam Howell. They're like all in on Sam Howell. Oh, they should have started him earlier in the year and this and that. And you're bringing in Eric Bieniemy. So the Commanders have some real momentum, I feel like, heading into this season. But like you said, 7-point favorite. Are we ready to say that they're a 7-point favorite heading into a week 1 game? Or is Arizona just going to be that bad? And like I mentioned, are they just totally tanking for Caleb here? Which I would understand. I kind of want the Patriots to do that. But instead, they're going to finish 500, and we're going to trade down and pick a right guard again. Like, what are we doing here with the Commanders as a 7-point favorite? Is it legit? Should I be all in on that?
I think it truly is more of a reflection on the Arizona team than the Washington team. I think it truly is showing how bad that Arizona, right? We're talking about trading away key starters from last season for 5th and 7th round picks, right? They're giving guys away. They are so clearly not interested in winning this year, and for good reason. Caleb Williams is one of the most impressive college quarterbacks I've seen in the last 15 years. He's truly going to be a star in the NFL. So I don't have a lot of faith in this Arizona team, and I think Washington can really take advantage of how bad that defensive line is in particular.
So let's hit one more quickly here. It's the Battle of Ohio, one of the better rivalries in football for my money. Because they've had such comical histories, and yet they're just totally intertwined. It's Bengals and it's Browns. The Bengals are 2.5-point favorites heading to Cleveland. Bengals on the money line at -135, Cleveland at +114 with a total of 47.5. It seems as though people are ready to forgive Deshaun Watson for how he played last season, not for the other stuff. But it seems like people are like, okay, he's got a full offseason underneath his belt here. Let's see what he can do. Let's see him come back and be 80% of the guy that he was. This roster is seemingly loaded. Otherwise, Nick Chubb is an absolute beast. You have probably top 3 defensive player of the year guy in Myles Garrett year after year here. So, I mean, I think the Browns are going to be improved because the Watson's just actually going to have reps underneath his belt with this team in a way that he didn't before. But the Bengals are the Bengals. So I'm kind of surprised to see them as only a 2.5-point favorite here. I know it's on the road, but I just feel like maybe this is off-season hype that's putting this number at 2.5, and it should be really closer to a touchdown. But that's just me.
Yeah, even if you don't go that far, even just the other side of 3, right? 3.5, right? But for me, the deal here is it's kind of a hot take. Nobody's seeming to agree with me. I've watched every snap of Deshaun Watson's career. He was my favorite player in football before a year and a half ago. Yikes. it's not the same guy, right? And I think that truly this Browns team, the pieces all do come together if Watson is what Watson was before. And I think we can give him a bit of pass for last year. I watched those games multiple times, just trying to find that juice, that spark that he had before. I was like, okay, we didn't really see it. Now he has a full off season. Like you said, a great offensive line. We've got Amari Cooper. We've got some pieces on this team. David Njoku, a very solid tight end that I bet on this season already. When it comes down to things, though, I don't think they're a better team than Cincinnati. And even like you said, with all the offseason hype, I still think Cleveland's going to be one of the most popular bets of the week as an underdog. I think not a lot of people are really talking about Cincinnati in the way that they're talking about Cleveland. And despite the great offensive line, despite Myles Garrett on defense, this secondary is still very weak for Cleveland. That's the downfall of that defense. The question is, are they going to get enough pressure on Joe Burrow quickly enough to kind of negate how awesome those downfield weapons are? I think the answer is no. I think Jamar Chase has an absolutely awesome game in this one, and I think Cincinnati takes care of business early.
I know Burrow had that injury early in camp, so that's something to maybe think about that's impacting this number. But I'm with you. I think the Bengals just go in there and do their thing and show that everybody, like, hey, we're still here. So I'm with you. I think the Bengals take care of business. All right, let's get to your segment here of early prop leans. It's obviously still early in the week, but you guys can go in and write this stuff down and be ready to roll. I mean, we got the guy for it. Monotone Football's early prop leans. The floor is yours, my friend.
Sounds good. I'll start about a game I was just in a second ago. I know I'm betting against the Cardinals, right? But I do really like the slot receiver Rondell Moore. And there's a big reason for that. Benjamin St-Juste, the corner for the Commanders, is one of my favorite players. I'm a big fan of his build. He's a big, lengthy outside corner. The problem is Washington is trying to make him into a slot corner. From everything I've seen, obviously we can all have different opinions, I think he profiles much better as an outside corner if you look at some of the DK Metcalf tape from last year. Instead, they're going to ask him to go inside and defend a guy in Rondell Moore, who's one of the shiftiest wide receivers in the league, a guy that they constantly look for those quick screens, those quick checkdowns. His ADOT is very low because they trust him to get yards after the catch. And I really think if you look at this Washington team, it's going to be one of the worst tackling secondaries in the league. And I think because that defensive line is so good, we're going to see whether it's Clayton Tune, whether it's Joshua Dobbs, we're going to see this Arizona team have to check the ball down constantly. I think Rondell Moore is a huge beneficiary of that. Not quite sure what they open his lines at, but he's one of those guys where if he's in the 30s or 40s, I'm going to be taking those alt lines all the way up to the 60s and 70s because all we need him to do is break one tackle, right? And like I mentioned, this Washington secondary profiles to be one of the worst tackling secondaries in football. Beyond that, I just mentioned a second ago, Jamar Chase is going to be one of my favorite guys in the league, right? I understand this Cleveland defensive line is very strong, and that's what's making all this hype so strong. If you look at the DVOA numbers from last year, you see a lot of that. The sacks are weighted very heavily right there. I don't have a lot of faith in this secondary. I really don't. And when you talk about a guy like Jamar Chase, who's proven to be one of the best receivers in football, has T. Higgins on the other side of him, so you can't commit. You can't commit to these doubles as heavily as a team like, Tyreek Hill or some of these other stud number one wide receivers. Justin Jefferson is going to be doubled more than anyone else in the league this year. You can't do that with Jamar Chase when T. Higgins is right on the other side right there. Additionally, Joe Mixon profiles once again to be one of the most ineffective running backs in the league between the tackles. He's going to get volume. He'll probably be a good fantasy asset so far this year, but I'm not sure I'm really a big believer overall. So I really do like that Jamar Chase look right there. I think he's going to have a huge game, and he's going to be one of those guys that it's definitely going to open at a high number, but that's fine. We'll talk about a running back before we get out of here. He's going to be a very controversial running back so far this year. Najee Harris, we're going to be wanting to start out with the unders on those rushing yards. What's one thing we know about this 49ers defensive line? They have been a top 5 unit no matter what advanced metric you're looking at, no matter what ESPN basic metric you're looking at. They have been an absolutely stellar defensive line over the last 5 seasons, no matter who's the defensive coordinator, no matter who the personnel is. And guess what? That personnel is really, really good. They did not lose too many big pieces, right? They still have the best linebacker core in football with Greenlaw right there and the other guy, I forget his name right now. But I absolutely love this Najee Harris under. I do not have a lot of faith in him. I love Jaylen Warren, one of my favorite late round fantasy picks so far this year. He's got the pass catching upside. Najee Harris, once again, profiles to be very ineffective between the tackles. They did upgrade that offensive line, but they're getting a really tough test week 1. So I love Najee unders in week 1. And yeah, I guess if I can give one more, Ezekiel Elliott touchdown. How do we feel about that, Tom? I want to pass that back over to you.
Let's say no on that. I just haven't seen him even really do much in a Patriots uniform outside of jog over some pads at practice. So, look, what was it? 12 touchdowns last season. So I see where you're going with this. And look, he's the shiny new toy. But I also feel like they want to kind of, make Ramondre happy in week 1 and kind of feed our guy Ramondre. They gave him the ball 7,000 times last season. Let's him get him in the red zone here. Let's get him those red zone touches. So I don't want to just say no because you are my friend, but I'm feeling Ramondre more for the anytime touchdown market there. But 12 touchdowns for Zeke last year, like I mentioned. Maybe there's value. Maybe this is a value play. You just sprinkle a little bit on Zeke.
Yeah, all I'm saying is there's going to be one sports book, and the OddsTrader app obviously makes this amazing to find. We know Ezekiel Elliott's one of the most disrespected names in football, right? Really, nobody in popular media has said anything positive about this guy in 2 years.
I just completely crapped on him for really no reason there. So you hit the nail on the head.
I mean, I truly think we're going to see some off-market numbers. We're going to see some like plus 300s, maybe even a little bit higher, despite the fact that he was incredibly efficient in the red zone. Nowhere else on the field, right? But if you need him to run 1 to 3 yards, Ezekiel Elliott's your guy. That's not very useful anywhere else besides the red zone. So I think we're going to get some good value on that, even though I don't think they're going to score too many touchdowns in that game. I do think if we get some off-market numbers, I will be sprinkling that, and maybe even Patriots' first touchdown as well.
All right. That's going to do it for our first episode here of the opening line report. And like I mentioned at the top of the broadcast, we are going to be doing this every Sunday night after Sunday Night Football. You're going to get me, you're going to get Monotone Football, and you're going to get Analytics Capper. 2 really smart football guys and 1 really sad Patriots fan. Every Sunday night, right after Sunday Night Football, we will be here and it will be awesome. And you will be able to use that information to make money the following week. It's going to be great. Download the OddsTrader app, Apple, Android, go to oddstrader.com. All of these tools are available for you guys. The best in class sports betting predictive AI. We do it better than anyone else. I will put our technology up against anyone. Go check it out, oddstrader.com. Download our apps and come win money with us and watch football and have a good time. So that's going to do it for the opening line report. Stu, any last thoughts?
No, man, just excited to be here. Excited to finally be able to dive into these slates. And I can't wait to talk with Analytics Capper next week as well.
Awesome. All right. Signing off here for OT. I'm TommyFreezePops. That's Monotone Football. Actually, point that way. I always get confused on the camera here. All right. We'll see you guys on Sunday night.